Good evening and welcome back to The Diff, where we ask the question, what if we could redesign everything? It's a pretty chilly evening here in the studio and I'm joined by Francois and Laura from the Make Fashion Circular Systemic Initiative from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm James George and I'm your host for this evening.
It's important because when you think about the fashion industry, most people would picture like the cover of magazines, the glamour that comes with fashion show, runways, but that glamour comes at a very high cost, as the video says. The fashion industry is extremely wasteful and polluting. When you look at how the industry operates today, there's a lot of waste in the system, so we wear our clothes a lot less than we used to. Over the past 15 years, the production of clothes has doubled, while the number of times we wear the clothes that we buy has decreased very significantly. And once we stop wearing those clothes, most often they end up in the landfill or incineration. To give you a sense of how much that is, it's the equivalent of one truckload of garments that goes to landfill or incineration every second. And currently there's less than 1% of our old clothes that will be recycled into new clothes. And so when we looked at the waste in the system, we saw that actually there's a massive economic opportunity that comes from the clothes that are stuck in warehouses, that are stuck at the bottom of our wardrobes and that are discarded too early in a landfill. And to capture this economic opportunity, we need a fashion industry where clothes are made from safe and renewable materials, are used a lot more today, and never become waste.
So Laura, how are you guys doing this? What is it that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is trying to champion here?
Yeah, so we have set up an initiative called Make Fashion Circular, and the initiative will run for 3 years. So we actually kicked off the initiative already in May this year at the Copenhagen Fashion Summit when we announced that we'd be doing it. The idea is that the initiative will bring around 50 organisations together. So organisations that include right from the very beginning of the value chain, so people that actually make fibres, produce garments, also brands and retailers, but then also those that have to collect them, sort them and reprocess them at the end when they're no longer used. As well as these groups, we'll bring together governments and cities and also what we're calling a little bit enablers, people that can help support this transition. So over the course of the 3 years, we will have this group of 50 and they will work together around some core areas of focus that can help us actually create momentum towards a circular economy for fashion.
But I guess, so what are you doing right now? 6 months in, what's been happening with the Make Fashion Circular team?
Sure, so I can take that one. And so what we've been doing is, with the work that we've done, so Make Fashion Circular came out of our report that we published at the end of last year, which was called A New Textiles Economy. And this started to identify areas where the industry could start to work to actually create this momentum towards a circular economy and came our sort of what we're calling areas of focus. And these are 3 things that we think need to happen across the industry in parallel and be worked on simultaneously to start to see that transition. So the first one is new business models that keep clothes in use. So exactly as Francois said, our clothing has really not been worn for very long compared to how long it could be used for. And so actually looking at how do we disrupt the current idea of buying clothes, wearing them for a short period of time and then just discarding them. So actually how do we change the fundamental business model of the industry so that the clothes are kept in use? And that could be through leasing or renting your clothes, for example, instead of actually buying them. And we're seeing some interesting examples. Maybe we can go on to the examples in a minute. So I've finished the train of thought. The second area that we're focusing on is safe and renewable inputs. And that's really important, that from the very outset, what goes into those new business models, into clothes, is made from materials, chemicals that aren't going to harm the people that are producing them, they aren't going to harm the people wearing them, and then after they're no longer used, there's no negative impacts as well from what was put into the clothes from the first place. And then the final one is something we're calling solutions, so used clothes can be turned into new ones. And this really focuses on how do you design something from the very outset so that once it's no longer worn, so you try and get as many uses out of it as possible, you make sure that it's made from safe materials and it's renewable, but once it's no longer able to be worn, can you, perhaps undo the stitching and actually take the fabric out and reuse that? How does that then become something else? Or how do you at least keep it at its highest value rather than it just going straight to landfill or going into recycling? What else can you get out of that garment?
Natalie asks, and this is an interesting point, why should these firms collaborate when they could steal a giant slice of the economic pie for themselves?
You want to do that one? You want to go for it?
I can. So what's interesting is like the industry, the fashion industry is extremely fragmented. So the largest company in the industry, which is Zara, has less than 2% of the global market share. So the giant size of the pie is actually not that real, because you're not in an industry that's concentrated like airlines, where you have like in the US 4 airlines that have 2/3 of the market, right? Here you have like the top 10 brands have less than 10% of the global market. And so because the market is so fragmented, and because they share so many of the same suppliers and have so much overlap done in the supply chain, they actually have an incentive in collaborating to make the supply chain better and the entire practice better, because together they are much stronger in actually aligning the incentives throughout the industry.
So how do the broader viewers get involved? I mean, Chris Grantham from IDEO in the previous session told us about digital wardrobes. Is that the answer for the modern consumer?
You don't have one answer, and that's the thing, because you have different ways of wearing clothes. So you were mentioning, for example, you have those highly durable classic items that you love, your coat, your like sweater, your pair of like jeans that you absolutely adore, and you want it to like age with you, and you want to like keep them forever. Those items, you own them, right? For the things that are a bit more like trendy, that actually run through the different seasons, you probably want to rent it or access it. And for the things that are like those durable items, once you don't want them anymore, but they're not really broken in any way, you just emotionally you're not that attached to it anymore, you can resell them because they still have value. So there's a lot of different ways to actually do that. If you have something you haven't used for a while, swap it with a friend or put it on eBay.
So it really is a mindset change from where we are at the moment. But how do initiatives like that compete with the likes of Primark and other high street retailers who are selling fast fashion, very cheap, fast fashion?
You don't really like compete with Primark. It's more like bringing them on board. And I think, as I was saying, because those organizations are starting to realize that their established markets are increasingly competitive, increasingly hard. They are taken out of pace. So like 10 years ago, H&M was probably one of the companies that was able to go the fastest. And then you have Zara, and then you have ASOS, and then you have Boo, and then everyone's going faster and faster. And it's very, very hard to sustain that competitiveness and leadership. And so they're starting to realize that maybe there are other models in which they can develop that would actually have completely different benefit and enable them to reconcile the pressure they start to get from government and some of their customers around like the environmental footprint of their work and the wastefulness of their practices, and actually the opportunity to satisfy those core needs.
It's really interesting when you talk about the kind of the changing thinking around that and the mindset. And we've had a question here from Vinny, and I think this is it's quite specific, but it'd be interesting to see if you guys have got any examples. Parents of young children know the struggles of kind of keeping children in clothes that fit. When we get to our stage, we don't grow that quickly, but except maybe the seasonal times of the year. Are there any examples of kind of kids' clothing companies that are adopting these sorts of models?
Yeah, so there's a couple of quite interesting ones actually. One that we've seen quite a lot and seems to be really doing quite well, which is called Viga, based out of Sweden. And they've used this idea of a subscription service purely for that reason. Kids, they can, when they're newborn, they can potentially even grow out of clothes before they've even worn them. So it's such a quick turnaround. They have developed all organic cotton baby clothes that can be then put back in. They know what's in the clothes, so they can take them back. I think they get hired out, a number of times. They get cleaned and then they get put back in and recycled once they're no longer used. So there's someone already taking advantage of that. And then there's another one that's slightly more innovative that I have to say I'm not entirely sure will catch on, but potentially called petit pli. And they've made these sort of, I guess you can describe them as corrugated clothes, where they're sort of all crumpled up. And actually, as the child grows, the idea is that they expand and it expands with the child.
So they've taken principles of origami, like the folding,
Yeah.
to actually create a garment that can grow and deploy as you grow.
So potentially you only buy one
So you buy
outfit
one
ever,
and it grows with
and
the
it
child.
grows with you.
Yeah, from about newborn to I think it's about 8 or 9 years old.
Well, I guess you said, there's not one answer. There needs to be
Yeah.
lots of different solutions.
But that's what's absolutely fascinating about this topic is that actually the only limit you face is the limit of your own creativity, and it's about how do you identify the core customer need that you want, and it's not more stuff. It's about different experiences. It's about different projection of yourself. How do you identify those, and how can you sell them better in a way that enables you to increase the material effectiveness that you have, so making sure that what you produce is used at its complete maximum.
Laura, Francois, thank you very much for that. It's a really big topic. You guys are 6 months into this three-year systemic initiative. If you do want to find out more information on the Make Fashion Circular, please check out the Ellen MacArthur website, where the updates will come and the news as it develops over the coming months. But I'm really pleased to have had them in the studio with us this evening. So we've heard how you can redesign clothes, how you can redesign the entire fashion industry in a way that makes economic and environmental sense.